Hello, everybody, and welcome to our final event for our virtual programming for Caliba Spring Forum. And you're in for a real treat this afternoon. We have four amazing YA authors, very capably moderated by Sharon Levin. And I'm going to turn it over to Sharon.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Levin, Books Inc. employee and book reviewer. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to please introduce themselves and give us an elevator speech of your book so people know what your book's about, please. Naz, would you like to start?
Hi, my name is Naz Katub, and this is my book. It's called The Loopholes, my debut young adult novel. It's about a 17-year-old gay Indian Muslim kid named Syed who gets kicked out after he's outed. And he travels the world in search of his ex-boyfriend who's gone missing so they can try and rebuild a home together, while accompanied by a drunk genie and her unreliable wishes. That's it.
That is a perfect speech. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew, you would like to introduce your book, please, and yourself?
Hi, my name is Andrew Joseph White. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the author of Hell Followed With Us. It's also my debut. And it's a really nasty post-apocalyptic horror novel about a trans boy who, escapes from the fundamentalist doomsday cult that caused Armageddon. And he ends up joining up with like a group of queer survivors hiding out in the ruins of an abandoned city. But, it turns out he's infected with a bioweapon that's rotting him from the inside out and turning him into a giant horrific monster. So obviously everything goes great.
Thank you. Okay, RM, it's on you.
Hi, I am RM Romero. Pronouns are she and her, and this is my debut YA novel, The Ghost of Rose Hill, which came out last Tuesday, so it's now available in bookstores. It's the story of Ilana Lopez, a Jewish Latina who goes to Prague during her 16th summer to stay with her aunt because her parents really want her to choose a practical career. She wants to be a violinist. So they want to see how humble her artist aunt's life is. While she's there, she encounters a ghost who is living in the abandoned Jewish cemetery behind her aunt's house, and soon comes to realize that Prague is full of magic and that some of it is actually quite dangerous.
Excellent, thank you. And Anna Marie, would you like to tell us about Lake Lore?
Hi, I'm Anna Marie McLemore. My pronouns are they, them, and my latest book is Lake Lore, which is about two non-binary Mexican-American teens. Both of them use they, them pronouns. Their respective forms of neurodivergence. One of them has ADHD, one of them is dyslexic, and about an enchanted world that's been hidden under a nearby lake for years, but that's now starting to come above the surface, bringing everyone's secrets along with it. This is a book about lake magic, about glitter, about Mexican art traditions, about non-binary identity, and also about the magic of what's inside our brains and how they work.
Excellent, thank you. These are all incredible books. Our first question is going to be a little general. Why did you choose to write YA? And I'm going to start with Andrew just because he is right over there in the middle of my screen.
I initially actually started writing this as YA because when I came up with the idea, I was like 19. And it seemed, that's kind of like where my head was, that's what I was reading the most. And another thing that drew me to it was around the time that I started writing this, if I went into a bookstore and tried to find a young adult book about a trans boy, it didn't exist. Cemetery Boys, which was the first one that I ever read, didn't come out until I was like 20 or 21. Mm-hmm. So I was like, this doesn't exist for me at the age that I needed it. So I knew that like when I started writing it, it had to be then. And I think it worked out pretty well.
Thank you. RM, do you want to answer that?
The Ghost of Rose Hill is actually told in verse, and I think poetry lends itself very well to passion. And the target audience for YA fiction is teenagers, and teenagers are overflowing with passion about their likes, their dislikes, what they want to be doing in the future, the relationships they have with other people. And as someone who loves to tap into that in her own work, I thought it was the perfect age group to tell a story about someone who is still finding herself and finding what she values.
Excellent. Thank you. And that line, poetry leads to passion, is perfect. Anna Marie, what led you to YA? And this is your 5th book?
What number is this? I think this is 8.
Oh,
I want
sorry.
to say.
Okay.
I
Thank
think.
you. Your 8th book.
So I think part of my heart is always going to be 17, just because of who I was becoming and how many decisions I made that impacted the rest of my life when I was a teen. That was the way it was for me, and that's the way it is for a lot of us, partly because that's what happens in our lives and with the formation of our identities, but also because I think we are asked to define ourselves when we're teens a lot of times. We are asked to engage in that process. And in some ways I was ready, and in some ways I wasn't. I started coming out as a teen. I met the trans guy who would eventually become my husband as a teen. I started embracing being Latino when I was a teen, and not working as hard to pass as I had for so long. It was also when I started embracing the part of myself that was a boy, and then I unembraced it for a long time, but it was there. So much of who we are and our identity either comes out of us when we're teens, or we're asked to start defining ourselves. And in some ways, that's a wonderful thing. If our identities are welcome, though it can also be a lot of pressure if we're still in that place of our identities are a work in progress. And really, I think so many of us are there for so much of our lives. We figure ourselves out. We figure out our identities, the intersections of who we are. It's work we start doing very early, and it's work we do our whole lives.
Thank you. Excellent. Naz, on to you. Why do you write YA?
I think YA is it's the last chance we get to change someone's mind before our thoughts atrophy into adulthood. And I love that YA is so varied and so diverse now, and there's so many books out there, especially by trans authors. Like, I think adults, we kind of suck, because like when we love something, that's all we want. Like, if it's a mystery, we just want to read mystery. Whereas I think teenagers are still hungry to figure out who they are. They just want to know their place in this world, and so they will devour anything. And you can still hopefully change their mind. And I think I write YA to help them if they need that help. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. 4 very different answers, right? But that all combine to like give us what YA is for people. That's outstanding. Thank you. Andrew, I'm going to start with you again because it's the top question. So Hell Followed With Us is incredibly intense and violent. And this is not a judgy thing, because it needs to be the way you wrote it. And it's also incredible. So it's part of the reason that you want readers to understand or feel the implicit, I'm misphrasing my own question. Is part of the reason you do that is that you want the readers to understand or feel the implicit and explicit violence that is directed towards LGBTQIA youth?
So when you sent out these questions ahead of time, I saw that and was like, that makes me sound smarter than I really am. But then I started thinking about all the reasons that this is such a violent book, and they all kind of come back to that eventually. Because the reason that I wrote it the way that I wrote it, besides the fact that I love action movies and I'm a sucker for that kind of thing, was that, I was angry, I was pent up, and I was scared. Because I started writing this right when I had come out, especially because my coming out was not fun. And it took a very long time to settle. And it was when I started queuing into anti-trans bills that were going on around that time. It was not a fun time to come out. So I had a lot of feelings, and I was very angry and very upset all the time. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to write the grossest power fantasy that I can. You know what, it's I'm angry. What if I just write a book about a trans kid that looks at a transphobe and doesn't have to be nice and just goes, I have 3-inch teeth. You have a neck that's unguarded. And thinking about that, the anger that's implicit there, why am I angry? It's because we're being hurt. Why am I scared? It is because we're being hurt. And as I started writing this, the catharsis was just so real. And it's like, what is it like to like take the stuff that hurts you and turn it around to the people that are hurting you, right? So obviously it's not like I'm advocating to actually do these things, because there's some stuff in this book that is, it's a lot. But it actually like really does come down to looking at trans kids and being like, I get that you're upset and scared, and here's like a way to work through that. And then turning to cis readers and being like, do you get it now? So so technically, yes, I would say yes, but it took me a long time to come around to that.
Yeah. And ironically, without giving anything away, the main character is being made to change in another way that's beyond their control. But
Yeah.
the cis people in that have no issue with taking control of their body the way they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's like, oh yeah, you can do this. We're gonna do this terrible thing with your body and have no issue with it. But you know, you try to do something with your body that you want to do. No.
Exactly. All these books are definitely must reads for sure. So your book is also intense, much less violent, but also intense, because Syed is kicked out of his family's home simply for being gay. I mean, his entire safety net is just gone. But you also add a lot of humor and mystery with the introduction of Reggie, who you introduce as the drunk genie, which is perfect. So it's a deep rom-com. How do you balance all that?
Gosh, I started out with wanting, it was just supposed to be a journey book. It was just about this kid who gets kicked out, because it still happens to kids, especially trans kids nowadays. There's few stories about queer teens getting kicked out, and I just wanted to write a journey about somebody who tries to build a home for themselves when they have been kicked out. And so I wanted to have some levity, because I just did not want, I don't think I'm a super serious person. So I wanted something that showcased how, because I have been homeless. When I was 17, I was homeless and I was sleeping at the Chelsea Piers in New York City. And it wasn't fun. It was the lowest moment of my life. And I was like, if I had a drunk genie friend, that would have been a bit more fun. And so I wanted to show this friend who could be their support, who could be Syed's support, and also him chasing after this dream of a home that he wanted to build together with his ex-boyfriend. But then I also decided this genie is so one-dimensional. I need to give her a backstory. And so what we have is a story that has 3 timelines, 4 different locations. And I think I wanted to show that teens go through a lot. They're not just living life in high school. They go through an emotional journey. And some of them go through quite a bit. Yeah, I feel like I have gone through quite a bit, especially when I was a teenager, and I just want people out there to understand that, we have gone through quite a bit. I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but
You're not mumbling, and a lot of that is in there. The pain that Syed goes through, because it's incredibly hurtful when your family of origin doesn't want you for who you are. Yes, thank you. And RM, you spend time maintaining Jewish cemeteries in Poland, and thank you for doing that. So did that inspire The Ghost of Rose Hill, or did the book inspire the volunteerism? Which came first?
So it was definitely the volunteerism that came first. I've been doing it for 3 summers before I decided to write the book. I wanted to give a window into what that experience is like, because it was very life-changing for me. And sometimes the best stories come from our own truths that we then mix in with other elements. In the case of Everyone in This Family, the fantastical. And I started out with simply a scenario. There was a girl who found an abandoned Jewish cemetery, and there she encountered a ghost, but it really had no plot until I found the villain of the piece.
And how did you choose, and is the word pronounced Vlodnik?
It's a Vodnik.
Vodnik, thank you. And how did you choose him?
I was scrolling around the folklore Twitter tag on Tumblr, and it used to happen every week, and there was a different theme every week. And that theme, I believe, was water. And I came across a piece of Czech folklore about a river spirit that captures the souls of the dead in his teapot. Oh, not only was that strangely hyper-specific, but it very much fit with the idea of, okay, there's this ghost. What if this river spirit is the one keeping him bound to Prague? And that also very much fit in with my character Ilana, who was born on an island. Miami Beach is an island where she comes from. She goes to a city with a river. Rivers and water, they are these liminal spaces. They travel between worlds and locations. And the story is all about liminality. It's about the magic that exists in the corners of the real world and tapping into that magic.
Excellent, thank you. And it draws you in immediately. Thank you. Anna Marie, you seem to effortlessly, and I'm sure you're laughing when I say effortlessly, but it feels that way to us, effortlessly weave so much together, right? Laura's and Bastian's journey, mentally and physically, folklore and reality, although folklore is also reality in your book. What was your starting point for Lake Lore?
So a lot of times when a book starts coming together in my brain, or something that's going to be book shaped, I kind of know what the different elements are going to be without necessarily knowing why. And in this case, I had a lot of this book about intersectional identity, but these characters being brown, being trans and non-binary, being neurodivergent, and also the element of Mexican art, of alegrías, different parts of animals coming together, where you have a deer with wings, or you have a lizard with a fish's tail. So things coming together in that way is kind of what happens I won't speak for everyone with ADHD, but in my brain and in a lot of the brains of people with ADHD, I know that's kind of what happens. Like, stuff crashes together. You get a lot of collisions. There's a part in Lake Lore where Bastian is trying to conceptualize, how do I talk about ADHD and explain it to someone who doesn't have ADHD? And they start talking about how we have as many neurons in our brains as there are stars in the Milky Way, in our whole galaxy. And sometimes you feel all of them at once. It feels like you're feeling all of them at once. And there's all that light and all that chaos. And how do you live with that? And on good days, love it in the same way that you love alegrías, that you gradually learn to love your intersectional identity, that you learn to understand this world under a lake that's part water, part air, where you have plants that change colors, where you have mythical animals come to life. So this sense of things crashing together that belong together, things crashing together that sometimes make sense and sometimes don't, and things coming together in our own hearts, because that's who we are. I think that's a lot of what ended up being at the heart of Lake Lore, and what sort of gave it its light and gave it its fire.
Excellent. Did anything not go in the direction you were planning from the beginning? Because it does feel so organic.
So I think one of the most unexpected things about this book is that a lot of the world under the lake came together the fastest. The world under the lake, these characters' relationship to it, neurodivergence coming to life in this landscape. And it's one of the parts that I thought was going to be the most complicated, but it came together most quickly. The hardest part I had in figuring out this book was the structure of it. And I didn't figure it out until I realized that this is a romance. This is a romance between two NBs. This is yes, it's kind of a portal fantasy. It's about this enchanted world, but at the heart of it, it's about these two non-binary boys falling in love with their own brains, their own hearts, and then falling in love with each other once they're able to do that. So once I knew that, and once I just went for it and thought, okay, this is about NB love, then the structure of it became clear. And I thought, oh, there's all this magic in here, but this is at its heart, it's a romance. It's a love story.
Yeah, thank you. And it works so well. We have a question or comment from Valentina, and she's absolutely right. All of these books have such gorgeous cover art. So she'd like to know more about the cover, and she'd also like to know more about the art for Hell Followed With Us behind Andrew. I know most times authors do not have any or little input over your covers. So let's start with Naz. How much input did you have, if any, and tell us about the art?
You know what's funny? My first note was I did not want an illustrated cover.
Interesting. What did you want?
I wanted something that looked like a Quran, like a cover, kind of like scripted with calligraphy and just like a tiny graphic. It's kind of like the cover of Habibi, but then they were like, let's see what the illustrator comes up with before, you know, we change our minds about it. And then I saw a sketch, and I was like, oh my, well, I said I would love the image of like movement and like a push and a pull. And then I saw the sketch and I was like, oh my gosh, my boy is so handsome. And
And he is?
I was like, yay. So we refined it. The next version, he looked kind of middle grade. And I was like, let's make him look, because the first version, he looked college aged. And so the second version, he looked middle grade aged. So we're like somewhere in between. And then let's change the locations a bit. The LA that you see at the bottom was the original final location, and I think my editor decided to hide that as a surprise.
Interesting.
So you'll find out his final destination if you read the book, or when you read the book. So yeah, so you see the Blue Mosque, Big Ben, and Los Angeles, and the smoke, and the genie on the. She's hiding in the smoke. I don't know if you can see her like right around the head. Oh, right there, the face peeking out.
There you
So
go.
yeah, so yeah, I don't know, just some mysticism in the cover and movement, like he's running from place to place. Yeah, so that was
So you
it.
did get some input. It sounds like it ended
I
up the way you
did.
wanted it.
Yeah, I did get some. So and the artists, they are so, oh my gosh, their artwork is so amazing. Just they're so talented. Their name's Shazleen Khan. They're, yeah, I'm just so in awe of their work.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for saying that, because I'm going to ask each of you to mention the name of your cover illustrator, because they should get that credit. Thank you, Naz.
Yeah.
And Andrew, you're right next to Naz on my thing. So, and Valentina wants to know about the art in the background. Definitely Hell Followed With Us has a very intense cover. So
Oh yeah, it is one of my favorite pieces of artwork to just like ever exist. I actually got permission from the artist Evangeline Gallagher to get part of it tattooed. So I'm very excited about that.
Excellent. And which part?
I think I'm gonna go for the wings. Yeah, it is. Oh, I love it so much. I actually got like a 3-page document that my editor was like, this is what I'm gonna send to the designer. Do you want to add anything? And I saw like this huge list of names, and I saw Evangeline Gallagher on there. I'm like, okay, I'm obsessed with Evangeline's work, but I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna leave it up to fate. And I sent it off, and my editor came back. It's like, good news, we got Evangeline. I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to sit here and have a crisis for a second. And then I got a few sketches, and I got to pick the one I liked best. And then we did a few rounds. I was, very insistent on like the Christian imagery, especially made in like the monstrous sort of thing. It's very symbolic. I am obsessed with it. It is so perfect. And was this the art that was being talked about like right here?
Valentina, which art in specific?
Okay, yeah, so this one. I got that commissioned a few weeks ago from an artist called Miasmatic or Miasmatic. They go by MK. And I was just kind of like, look, I do my own art all the time, but I want to commission my boys, obviously. Because I'm in love with like the main relationship of the book, because we have a trans boy, like a gay trans boy, that's slowly turning into a monster. And then another character that's really important to me, a gay autistic boy. I was like, I love the two of them, and I love their relationship. And I'm like, you know what? I am 100% gonna drop, like 3 figures on this art. And I did without hesitation. And it is beautiful. The artist is actually doing another piece of art for a charity box that I'm with, where it's Benji, the main character, what he looks like at the end of the book. And the artist came to me and was like, hey, so what's Benji look like at the end of the book? And I was like, okay, think of every horror video game you've ever played. And do not worry about making him pretty. The grosser, the better, and you'll be on the right track. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Ooh, if you can share that with us later, because
Oh, yeah.
that would be awesome to see. Thank you. Anna Marie, that cover is gorgeous. So, and I'm being proven wrong because everybody has input on their covers now. Woohoo! So, what kind of input did you have? Are you happy with this? Please tell us your cover artist and all the details.
I love this cover so much. I'm still pinching myself that there are like 2 brown envies on the cover of a book. I would not have asked for that, would not have dared to ask for it. And it was my publisher's decision. Liz Dresner was the designer. Carolina Fuenmayor was the artist. And I'm so thrilled with what's captured in these 2 characters, because their identities, including their gender identities, feel really, really respectfully represented. The fact that there's all these colors is very reflective of you have this lake that's made of paint sometimes. And the butterflies, it's something that I absolutely love, because they're in, like, lake butterflies are in the book. And it's also sort of like one of the longest running ADHD jokes is about, like, do we get distracted by butterflies? Not all of us. I do. I was actually on a panel talking about lake lore outside, and a butterfly flies by, and I just had to say, like, I'm sorry, what was I talking about? So it's happened more and more talking about lake lore, I think because I'm talking about neurodivergence. But I never would have thought that I would get to write a book about two Latin trans characters, and I definitely never thought that they would be on the cover of a book. So I'm grateful that they're there, and I'm grateful that this is just like the loudest, like, rainbow. It makes me really happy.
Excellent. Thank you. It really does convey the book so well. And RM, again, another gorgeous cover. Did you have input?
I did. I actually gave my editor my Pinterest board for this story. And yeah, I'm a very visual writer. So I end up collecting a bunch of images that are snapshots of scenes, or kind of that capture the mood and the aesthetic of it. And we threw on some names for cover artists. I said I did want an illustrated cover. My origins are in visual arts, and I was obsessed with animation as a child, so I always really liked illustrations. And she said, well, what if she showed me a couple of people, and then she says, well, wouldn't it be great to have another Latina do the cover? And I said, that would be wonderful. So it was Isabel Ibanez who did the cover. She's also an author, and she's also an artist. She's incredible. The roses, they actually look like a tattoo on my back, which I was not intentional, but it's still very cool. And then we have the city of Prague, the main character, Ilana, in the cemetery. And then on the bridge, we have her soft ghost boy. So I was blown away by this cover. I love it. I can't stop looking at it.
That's amazing. And I think is it true? Things have changed because authors did not used to get a lot of input. So it is so nice to hear this, because it's really reflecting your work. Naz, I'm going to put you on the spot for a minute.
Oops.
Your sweetie is an animator. So do you want him to do a cover for you?
No.
Oh, too much happening in that same household. Okay, go on.
No, it's like, I know not to mix business with personal stuff. Like,
Good point.
like the last thing I want is like, hey babe, why is his face like that? I don't want to. Like, I want to be able to have that distance so that I can be objective, and we don't go to bed like ever holding a grudge against each other. Like,
Very wise.
he's so talented, and he's so busy. He has a full-time job, and he also has 3 books coming out next year. So I know.
Ooh, okay, you're gonna have to put those in the chat so we can all keep an eye out for them.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
put his name in the chat. Yeah.
Thank you. And all of these books, are just not controversial at all, because people are so open to LGBTQIA stuff these days. I'm being completely sarcastic, right? Especially now, it's like worse. So they all have heavy topics, and thank you for doing that, which means there's going to be pushback, they're going to be banned, they're going to be shadow banned, which means that the book isn't the book Benson Shum, there we go. The book isn't even purchased. Shadow banning is even worse because you don't know the book has been kept off a shelf. Some of you have probably already experienced this. Some of you will. Do you have something to say here? We're mainly booksellers here. Do you want to say something to those who want to keep your books on the shelves and who want to make sure that we have our mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, and kids and teens and adults are all seeing your characters? What wisdom do you have for us? You're all on the spot now. You all look very nervous. But Anna Marie looks serious, and I think they may be ready. Do you want to go for it, Anna Marie?
I don't know about ready. I just have I just have a lot of pain for the fact that people who are banning books don't. I don't know if they understand that it's not just saying that these books don't belong on shelves. You're saying that these identities, these these kids and teens in our lives don't belong in our communities. So that's the heartbreak of it. Is just what are you being told about your identity? And I'm thinking about growing up and kind of not being on shelves, like my cultural identity, my gender identity, my queer identity not being on shelves. And that was heartbreaking in its own way, because it was like I didn't exist. It was like I wasn't welcome. My communities weren't welcome in the world of books. But then to have those books be out there and be told they don't belong here, how would that not feel? Like you don't belong here, that we don't recognize you and see you as part of our communities. So I'll just say thank you to everyone who shares these books, and who is an affirming voice for hearts that need that kind of affirmation, for who need that love and who need to hear that our identities are valid, our identities are beautiful. If I hadn't had people reading with me growing up and reading to me, I would not have learned how to read. I'm dyslexic. It would not have happened just from school education. So if I did not have people who cared about my interaction with books, I don't know how I would have learned to read. And that follows with in relation to identity and stories too, because I had people in my community who, what few books there were, who helped me find them, who put them in my hands, and in some cases, like put fake covers on them because I could not read them safely. So I'll just say thank you for everyone who does the work of helping readers find books that they need and that their hearts need.
Thank you. And as Valentina says, and thank you for writing them, because we need the books to put them in the hands of kids and teens. Naz, words of wisdom?
I'm going to build on what Anna Marie just said. I think what's really scary is that these people who are trying to ban books feel very dangerous to me. Like they may actually conduct acts of violence against teens out there who are seeking our books, our materials for them to just help figure themselves out. I used to volunteer for a youth crisis hotline, and the number of youths out there, especially trans youths out there, who had to be away from home to even call us, it was just devastating. I think the danger is what scares me the most. Like they can easily, because of their silly ideologies, they can be easily convinced into committing. I wrote an author's note in my book for anyone. Just gonna read it real quick. I don't know where you are in the world as you're reading this, but if coming out poses a potential danger, then please make the safest decision and come back to this book when you're living under safer circumstances. I promise you it will still be here. And when you do come out, just know I will be here waiting. We all will be, to welcome you to your new family. And I think that's the power of our community. I just want teens to know that they just have to hold on. And if I just want to thank all booksellers out there who believe in our books and continue to champion our stories, because I think that our stories are so few, and there's still so many different kinds of identities out there. So yeah.
Right. Thank you. That was wonderful. RM, I'm going to come to you next.
To kind of echo what Naz and Anna Marie have said, it is a very frightening time right now. It does feel like many young people are being told that their identities are not acceptable and actually very threatening to the safety of their communities, to what is considered to be acceptable. And like a lot of people on this panel, I never saw myself as a young person. There were no Latin characters really, especially in things like movies. There were no queer characters, and when there was, I still remember when the WB had to fight to include a kiss between two female characters on Buffy the Vampire Slayer back in the early 2000s, and how revolutionary it was to see that, and how revolutionary it was to find these on the shelves, these tiny moments, these scraps of representation, and how simultaneously beautiful it is that these books exist now and they're being put out by mainstream publishers, but at the same time that people are trying to take them away from the kids who really need them. So thank you to booksellers who are making an effort to put these books out there and to make sure that teens know that they exist in case they do need a place of solace, because books can provide real solace when you're going through a difficult time. They can show you that it does get better and that what you're going through is normal. You are not a threatening or unacceptable force in the world. You belong here.
Excellent. Thank you. And again, I'm going to repeat what Valentina said. Thank you for writing them, because we need your books. We all need your books. So, and Andrew, on to you.
I appreciated being saved for last, but honestly, I still don't, because I'm glad that you asked what to say to the people who are trying to help us, because if it was to the people who weren't, you would not be able to repeat what I say, especially, and I wouldn't want it on recording. I am 23, going through puberty again and angry all the time. I have a lot of words pent up. But like one of the things that like really gets to me is I started TikTok a few weeks ago, and that's where the kids are. Oh God. And the amount of comments I get being like, I really want to read your book, but I can't take it home.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, I know I'm 23 and I don't make a lot of money. I'm your dad now. Give me the adoption papers. I'm your father now. I'd be a terrible dad, but it still counts. But it's a lot of, just because my mom is in charge of a library system, and I grew up in a library, and so I know like how important it, like I grew up surrounded by books. Like even my mamaw worked at a publishing plant, and she would take the books home that didn't make the cut. Like maybe they'd have 2 chapter 12s or something. And so like I grew up surrounded by books, and even though I didn't like 100% see myself, I was just kind of like, okay, I've decided that this man's gay now, and I'm just gonna have to deal with it. And that's how I got, that's how I saw myself, is just making things up. And the fact that kids like don't have to do that anymore, and then adults are being like, well, we're gonna put you back there. Especially because I'm 23. Like this just started happening. Like around the time that I came out is when things started going good. So I kind of, as long as I knew who I was, things were available. And I don't know what it's like for people that are older, but it seemed okay. And for me, it's starting to backslide when I've never seen that backslide in my life, which is really weird. And it's very upsetting. And of course, I'm very angry, which is the whole point of my book and like my entire brand. But I'm honestly like really grateful for like someone mentioned, putting new book jackets on books, and just doing stuff like that in order to like smuggle books like under the radar of like the parents or like the PTA or something like that. I like 100% absolutely respect that. Like I know that like once or twice, like I've like bought a book for someone and ripped the cover off. and will like build like a new one or just give it to them just like unbound. And it's like, all right, it just, this just looks like a crumpled piece of paper. You got this.
Right.
Or like hiding like a Word document or like encrypting a document or stuff like that. We shouldn't have to go back to doing that. It's tiring. It's exhausting. So I really appreciate like all of the people who, have a little more like institutional power than me that are like helping out with that.
Right. Excellent. We only have a few minutes left. Oh, I love that Valentina says our panel has made her laugh and tear up and get pissed off, which is fine, because that is where power often comes from, is getting angry enough to make a change. You all are making that difference because you are writing these books. You're letting kids and teens be seen. It's huge. We thank you so much for that.